When it comes to most policies, the left wants to exert as much control over your daily life as possible. We'll take the latest suggestion for new Democrats in Congress. Joe Biden's former economist, Jared Bernstein, writes in today's Washington Post that the solution to climate change is brand new carbon taxes and government incentives for alternatives. Joining me now to debate this is Brad Johnson, co-founder of Climate Hawks Vote, as well as Marc Morano, founder of Climate Depot and author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. All right, Brad, America's actually lowered, I think, our carbon emissions under Trump, so why should Americans sacrifice our way of life for these new carbon taxes?
Actually, my understanding is that carbon emissions have gone up pretty significantly in the last few years, and a lot of what we've seen in
I don't think so. Not in the last 12 months.
We can go.
In the last 12 months?
Your viewers can go and check out at EIA.gov, the Energy Information Administration, which has those numbers.
Greenhouse gas emissions have gone down 2.7% in the last 12 months.
Well, we can go to the record and check.
Okay, so answer the question.
If we accept the premise of the question, the reason to act on climate change is because of the harms that it's causing to Americans in the world already today.
Are you going to cite the phony 97% of all scientists?
Oh, no, I was going to talk about...
Okay, because that's been debunked.
I was going to talk about...
Everyone like trots that out, like, oh my God, 97%. Then all of a sudden you dig into it, you can unpack that in like 4 different ways, and it's completely phony. But go ahead.
No, I was going to talk more about what we've seen in Puerto Rico and in California and all across the country and the world, where we're seeing billion-dollar climate disasters on the rise, and this is real American suffering.
None of that. I mean, I'm a conservationist and I'm a real outdoors person, so I cherish the environment, and I don't think we should abuse it. I think we should have a balanced approach to our life, really. I cry when barns are torn down. I'm really pathetic on this stuff. So my problem, though, is when you say, well, this happens, you make a connection from point A to point B with very little evidence when it comes to wildfires. We have people living in areas that they never lived before, and incredibly remote terrain. And I've been to some of the parts of they're beautiful. Yeah. But for someone who believes in animals and wildlife, I mean, maybe that's where the animals and wildlife have to be, and probably not in these remote canyons that have always been dry. Yeah,
I mean, the fundamental reality about whether we're talking about wildfires or floods is that these are human disasters. They're human-made disasters that are caused by human decisions.
Which meteorological events aren't human-made? A regular rainstorm?
No, I'm talking about the cost to life and property. Those are human decisions, the decisions that we make of where to build, right. What kinds of building materials we use, but also the pollution that we put into the atmosphere. And collectively, as a society, we've made the decision to pump billions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
So do you think we should basically immediately, go to 50%? I mean, some of the more radicals are cut by 50%.
Keep it in the ground. Some of them don't.
Yeah, stay in the ground.
Well, I mean, it really is... should be a decision for the American people and for the world.
Well, they're rejecting it in France, correct? I mean, they're rejecting the big push.
They're rejecting it in France. It's spreading across Europe. Brazil's new government, the foreign minister called it a Marxist hoax. Canada has a carbon tax rebellion. Donald Trump was criticized by French President Emmanuel Macron for promoting nationalism and pulling out of the UN Paris Agreement. And then a week later, Paris is ablaze. What Brad he tries to call it poison weather. Wildfires, droughts, hurricanes. On every climate timescale, 50 years and beyond, they're either no trend or declining. That's how you look at the science. You don't look at it. California had much worse droughts in previous centuries. Global drought is showing no trends. And this is even buried in the UN reports. They can't even hype that kind of
But then you see the icebergs and big pieces of ice coming off. Then you see the polar bear really lonely on a piece of ice. And I start to tear up and I cry, and I'm sure a lot of other people cry, because it looks really awful. And we are changing the planet, with no doubt about it, correct?
Right,
we are changing the planet.
But here's the perverse thing. If we actually...
Species are being wiped out because we do dumb things.
Yes, but that's one thing we know how to do now is save species. One of the biggest success stories is we know even now how to, when you do logging and other forests, how to, instead of clear-cutting vast swaths, they do what they call sustainable logging, and they cut different sections. But the bottom line here is this carbon tax would actually increase emissions, because if you hamstring the developed world, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, all that's going to do is move industry over to China, India, places without that. And there's actually peer-reviewed studies and other studies showing that emissions for decades to come would go up. So even if that's your goal, it's the wrong way to go.
What's interesting, though, is that conservatives on this have a very little emotional appeal of their arguments. I mean, they don't sell their points well, and so kids come home from school and they're literally in tears because they're frightened to death that it's all coming down. And there was a really interesting moment at the Poland UN big plenary session on climate change, where a little Swedish, 15-year-old Swedish young woman made a very impassioned speech. Let's watch.
Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury.
Where the Republicans are conservatives' arguments that are that's pretty, you know. For most people watching that's very.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sad. She's led a school strike in Sweden, and they're trying to spread across the world of kids protesting for government action on climate. What she's not realizing is that government action on climate is the worst thing you can do to the developed world, because you're going to limit their ability to develop, and it's actually bad for the environment. It's better to have fossil fuels and carbon-based development in Africa, South America, and Asia. Then you don't have people dumping stuff into the rivers, open sewage. You don't have them burning huts made of dung, burning dung and breathing in bad air. Infrastructure has saved us in the United States. We can weather.
Life has definitely gotten better for a lot of people who are poor. But I want to play a montage of some of the more alarmist type comments. Sure. Let's watch.
It is hard to think of the worst thing this president has done, but so far, this might just be the one.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world.
We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
Marc, see, that goes a little bit, and that's after we dropped out of the Paris Accord. I mean, do you subscribe to those alarmist comments? It's all coming.
Well, I mean, that last one I think was just a dig at the president, which is not necessary. But I think the point that Greta Thunberg, the young woman there, was making is really what's driving. Quite frankly, what I think Marc likes to talk about, and what this is really about, which is what's more important, the profits of a few very wealthy and powerful industries, billionaires, or our children. And we get to make that choice.
Won't carbon taxes hurt the poorest people, though? The rich people can pay the carbon tax. They don't care. But the poor and the middle class will pay a lot.
It's really funny you should say that, because the state-level initiatives to pass carbon taxes this year, which were defeated by the fossil fuel industry outspending the advocates by tens of millions of dollars.
Why do we have all those Solyndra-type flops? So we had $500 million of taxpayer money go to Solyndra, all the Solyndra-type offshoots. Those were all big donors to Obama.
And they went down the tubes. This is something that I would defer to you and your viewers for checking the facts. But my understanding is that program, the ARPA-E, invested in lots of industries and lots of companies and has made a profit for the American people.
Is that accurate? Well, that's interesting if that's true. It still doesn't mean Solyndra was a good investment.
He says
exactly. No, exactly. That's the whole thing.
But I'll look into that.
Brad has said politicians who deny climate claims should be put in jail. He just said that last 2017.
Do you really think they should be put in jail?
I mean, if they're lying deliberately and causing harm to other people.
This whole town would be. Actually, there's some wisdom. This whole town, most people would be in jail, like all politicians, for lying about. If it's just climate, if it's across the board, maybe I'll take you up on that.
He doesn't want to allow dissent, and he claims that solar and wind are so just ready to burst on and make all this money and take over. If something is that good, solar, wind, renewable energy, why do they have to ban energy? Why do you have to ban coal, go after fracking, oil?
Like everything.
There's not a fair playing field here. They want to go through and ban it. If Al Gore is right, the day you can go to Walmart and buy a solar panel and put it on your home and get off the grid is the day the climate policy debate ends. But that's not what they're interested in. The UN's calling for centralized transformation.
Oh, we burned through hundreds of billions of tons of fossil fuels. And the United States has benefited greatly from it. I have, all of us have. But it comes at a cost. And that pollution, and now we're paying the piper for that.
I don't know what the cost is.
We'll end on that. Thank you so much, both of you.